news, the race that restarts Victoria. 10,000 fully vaccinated punters allowed at Flemington to enjoy the Melbourne Cup. 1,890 new infections as ICU doctors beg people to get vaccinated. A pregnant mother killed in Bayswater North, her ex-partner in hospital under police guard. A 7-year-old girl dies after she was struck by a caravan at Wilson's Promontory. Exclusive access to the police squad fighting youth crime. And relief for working families, the cost of childcare is set to be slashed.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Alicia Loxley.
Good evening. Well, in the race to COVID normal, 10,000 lucky punters will watch the running of next month's Melbourne Cup from Flemington. The fully jabbed, masked-up crowd will be part of a trial of Victoria's vaccine economy. But not everyone is backing the form guide out of lockdown. Stephanie Anderson begins our coverage.
The race that stops the nation, now part of the plan to restart the state.
The message to the rest of the country and indeed the world about the fact that we are open.
10,000 punters guaranteed access to Flemington on Cup Day, the event classified as a trial to get a vaccinated economy off and racing.
Last year we had the broadcast without attendees on course. This year, with 10,000 people, it'll look fantastic.
Being in that crowd comes with conditions. All must live within 25 kilometres of the track, wear a mask, stick to one of 5 dedicated zones within the course and be fully vaccinated or hold an exemption. But even with those measures, accusations of a double standard.
There's been one rule for sport and then there's been another rule for the event industry.
The government need to be able to show the health advice that says it's safe to be able to go to the Melbourne Cup, but it's not safe to go to a food and wine festival.
Whether it's the Melbourne Cup, the Australian Open, the Formula One next year, all of those things I think are a very powerful signal that we are bouncing back.
The race crowd cap doesn't include track staff and participants, and there's no birdcage, but it does include connections. The VRC now working out the odds of getting members and the general public through the gates.
We have to balance that. We'll be working through what makes sense.
Approval for the same level of access for crowds on Oaks and Stakes Day has been tied to Victoria reaching that 80% double jabbed target. The roadmap forecasts that will happen by November 5. The race meets are scheduled for November 4 and 6. The emphasis on vaccination status is fast increasing, and now the technology is following suit. From tomorrow, an updated Service Victoria app will be available, requiring users to check into a QR code through the app rather than just their camera. One tick shows you've successfully registered, a second confirms you're fully vaxxed.
Coloured holograms that move can be seen on the check-in screens, so venues will know it's real, making it much harder to fake a check-in screen.
For the around 2% of people who don't have a smartphone, hard copies of the certificate can be requested through Services Australia. One of the challenges to be tried and tested when a trial kicks off in regional Victoria tomorrow.
I had no doubt in myself in wanting to be a part of this. If it means we can get the state of Victoria back into some sort of normality and the cinema industry back on its legs.
Chris's Lakes Entrance business is one of 14 taking part, alongside North Pier Hotel in Cowes, the Anglican Church of Australia in Flora Hill, Bendigo Art Gallery and Darlings of Beauty and Roberts One Real Estate in Warrnambool. They'll report back to the rest of the state on a system we're told we'll be sticking to for some time.
People should assume that it's absolutely there for the summer. And it might be there for a little bit longer.
And Steph joins me live now from the Sydney Myer Music Bowl. Steph, that's going to be the backdrop for the return of live music.
It is, Alicia, and it'll actually happen before Cup Day on Saturday the 30th of October. That's when the state government says several thousand people, we can't get a more specific number out of them just yet, will be allowed here to watch Victorian artists perform live again. Now, who will be in that lineup and who will organise this event are details still to be locked in, but it will be run as another trial site, meaning both that new vaccine certificate technology and the approach of having only those fully vaccinated or who hold a current exemption here at major events, Alicia.
All right, Steph Anderson, thank you. 2/3 of our new COVID infections are in people aged under 40. As Victoria records another 1,890 cases, a senior frontline surgeon is begging young people to get vaccinated. Adam Hegarty reports.
A surgeon turned interviewer, Dr Ahmed Ali wants to cut through any way he can.
The message is really clear. They're young, they're not vaccinated. They're all from our community.
In wards and on paper, of our 1,890 new infections, a quarter are under 20, 2/3 under 40.
I've never seen so many fairly young people in ICU with the one problem, all of whom are at a high risk of dying.
This video from the Austin Hospital shared by the Chief Health Officer as the COVID commander listed the numbers. 5 deaths, a woman in her 80s, 2 men in their 70s, another 2 in their 50s. More than 600 in hospital, 126 in ICU, 88 on a ventilator. While half of today's cases reside in 6 LGAs, Brimbank, Casey, Hume, Melton, Whittlesea and Wynnum. But some of the breakdown is falling down the list of priorities.
It is increasingly now coming into suburbs all across Melbourne and all across regional Victoria.
In Mildura, 55 active infections, but as yet not a single Tier 1 site listed. Contact tracers up against it as many go against the rules. In Bawbaw, still the signs of banned meetups.
Getting COVID's a pretty bad thing to get, and that's not where you want to be after an illegal gathering.
Are those people looking at fines, or have they been fined?
They're looking at COVID.
And perhaps a stay in a hospital bed where we find pleas like this from COVID patients.
Guys, please take the vaccine. I'm telling you, it's not worth it. I'm a fit person.
But still, to some, not convincing enough. More and more GPs are being swamped by patients wanting an exemption from the jab. And tonight, an alarming allegation that at least one has buckled under the pressure. Lineups like this at a Western Suburbs clinic prompting health authorities to raise the alarm. The GP telling 9 News people, not necessarily these, have turned up after word spread on social media they could get a vaccine exemption. The doctor says there's nothing to investigate.
That's very much a live matter, principally one for the Commonwealth, but we'll have to wait and see what they find, and if they establish that things have happened, then there might be consequences from a state point of view as well.
Many doctors have had to turn people away.
Most are our regular patients wanting exemptions, and it's a difficult, uncomfortable discussion often.
Despite that, more than 80,000 vaccines in the past 24 hours. 85% have now had the first dose, 58% their second.
There are vanishingly few and really rare issues for having a medical exemption to vaccines.
Adam Hegarty, 9 News.
After 106 days in lockdown, the shackles come off in Sydney at midnight. Let's go live now to Laura Tunstall. Laura, freedom for the double vaccinated is so close.
Oh, it sure is, Alicia. Look, the countdown is on for those restrictions ending at midnight tonight. But for some in Sydney, the party got underway a little earlier. Beaches in Sydney last night were packed with people. Police were even forced to move on crowds in Bondi. Look, for businesses today, they've spent the day getting ready after 106 days of lockdown. Retail, hospitality, hairdressers, indoor pools and gyms are all getting ready to open their doors to the double vaccinated. Premier says the state should be proud of reaching that significant 70% vaccination milestone.
You've earned it. It's been 100 days of blood, sweat and no beers. But we've got it and we're back in action tomorrow.
This will be a moment to cherish for people right across New South Wales, reuniting with family and friends.
Now, some venues like the Toongabbie Sports Club, where I am now, are so excited that they're actually opening their doors to patrons at midnight. Just 6 hours to go, Alicia.
Not long. All right, Laura, thank you very much for that. A pregnant mother is dead and her estranged partner is in hospital under police guard, accused of attacking her inside their Bayswater North home. Michelle Dara's family says the passionate social worker was selfless and generous and would have done anything to protect her children. Crime reporter Lana Murphy.
Her name was Michelle Darragh. She was an adoring mother of 2 young sons with her 3rd baby on the way. The dedicated social worker spent her days making a difference in people's lives until last night when she was robbed of hers. The 32-year-old was killed in the home where she raised her little boys, allegedly at the hands of her partner of 6 years. Both adults were found with critical injuries around 7:30 p.m, but Michelle couldn't be saved. 29-year-old Ben Coman was taken to the Royal Melbourne Hospital. The cabinet maker is now in a stable condition and under police guard.
I had only spoken to Ben yesterday and asked him if he was okay about everything, and he was fine. We did not expect this at all. They were just a standard young couple with 2 kids, you know, living in suburbia.
9 News understands the couple had recently separated and Michelle and the children were living elsewhere. She returned to the home yesterday afternoon and neighbours say they noticed nothing out of the ordinary.
She came to pick up some stuff, and I saw him take off to go for a walk, and that's about the last I saw of anything, really. I didn't see him come back, didn't think anything of it, and then later on, 7 o'clock at night, the sirens came, and that's when we sort of realised something really bad's happened.
Michelle's devastated brother today remembering her as a beautiful soul who put everyone's needs before herself. Our family has lost a beautiful daughter and sister. We are beside ourselves with emotion. She absolutely adored her boys and gave her life to them. Lana Murphy, 9 News.
A young girl has died in a camping tragedy at Wilson's prom. Elizabeth Moss is covering this story. Lizzie, can you take us through what happened?
Yeah, absolutely tragic circumstances down at the prom today, Alicia. It was around 10 this morning when this 7-year-old girl was struck by a caravan which was being moved around the Tidal River campground down there. Now, thankfully, there was an off-duty paramedic nearby who desperately tried to save this little girl, performing CPR on her, but unfortunately she could not be revived and died at the scene. No doubt a very confronting and upsetting situation for everyone there. The driver involved is helping police with their investigation, Alicia, but a very sad day for her family who are tonight without their little girl.
Absolutely. All right, Lizzie, thank you. Well, the big cost of childcare is set to shrink for many Victorian families. The federal government is bringing forward fee assistance for multiple kids in daycare as part of a push to get more women back to work. Emily Rice with the details.
Working full-time before the birth of her 3rd child last year didn't come cheap for Bayside mum Lisa.
I've had 2 kids in daycare full-time, so 5 days a week, and it was very, very expensive.
In Melbourne, childcare fees range between $120 and $160 per day per child. Means-tested federal government subsidies do reduce the cost, and now more help is on the way. From March, families with multiple children in daycare will have 95% of their out-of-pocket expenses for the 2nd or 3rd child paid for by the Commonwealth.
It means that the average family with 2 or more kids in childcare will be $700 better off this financial year.
And more than $2,000 better off next financial year. For Lisa, it means returning to full-time work will be worth it.
And I'll have the crossover of them both in daycare for 2 years. So that's super significant.
From December this year, the federal government will also dump the $10,500 annual cap on subsidies, which had applied to parents with a combined income of just over $189,000.
We think it's a great support for Australian families, particularly at this really tough time.
Childcare subsidies can be controversial, with some arguing that all of society should not foot the bill to babysit other people's kids. The counter-argument is childcare enables parents, particularly mothers, to go to work. And ultimately, working families contribute to the economy by paying taxes.
It also makes the most of Australia's human capital, our highly educated and capable female workforce.
I love going to work. I like being able to work and be a mum.
Emily Rice, 9 News.
All right, Alicia Milling is here now with a look ahead to all of your Sunday night sport.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Tonight, the trade period enters its final 72 hours and there's a number of deals that are still in the works. We'll have the latest live. Also, we meet the exciting draft prospect with some friends in high places.
It's kind of been a support for me and mentor when I've kind of moved into Melbourne and transitioning into this life.
Zaki washes away a tough encounter ahead of the Cox Plate, the heavyweight fight that lived up to the hype, and you just wait until you see how he celebrated. That is all coming up, Alicia.
All right, Alicia, look forward to it. We'll see you soon. A truck driver killed after his semi-trailer rolled off the Calder freeway. That's next. Plus, Lebanon left in the dark as its energy crisis worsens. And Chris Kohler explains why lockdown customers are going nuts for an Oakley business.
Was here 1 minute and he was gone the next.
Phil went to the GP for help.
He was so thirsty. It was frightening.
But he was sent home and died that night.
They couldn't revive him.
How could doctors miss the signs?
It was so simple.
9 News tomorrow.
A truckie was killed when his vehicle rolled down an embankment off the Calder freeway at Gisborne. The SES and firefighters worked to free the 67-year-old man. Police believe the gas tanker was in a truck stop when the driver somehow lost control. And a young driver has died after crashing into a tree and through a fence in Cranbourne in the early hours of this morning. The 23-year-old Hampton Park man's friend was thrown from the vehicle. The 34-year-old passenger from Lyndhurst is now fighting for his life in the Alfred Hospital. Lebanon's electricity grid has shut down and it's unlikely to be switched back on for days. As Charles Croucher explains, the countrywide blackout is the result of a fuel shortage crisis.
An entire nation plunged into darkness. Lebanon's 2 main power stations running out of fuel, shutting down the electricity grid. Street and traffic lights unable to work. Businesses helpless. This shop owner can't open because of the outage, and government officials say power is unlikely to be restored for several days. My house is on the 11th floor, this man says. I can't go up or down. Many locals do run their own generators, providing some valuable light, but diesel is hard to come by. Lebanon has been battling an economic crisis and a lack of fuel for months. The government struggling to recover from the 2020 Beirut blast, which killed more than 150 people and injured thousands. The United Nations now estimates 78% of people are living in poverty, a population left in the dark in more ways than one. Charles Croucher, 9 News.
The Taliban has warned Washington not to destabilise the regime following the first face-to-face talks since the troop withdrawal in August. Speaking in Doha, the group's foreign minister insisted good relations with the Taliban are good for everyone. It comes as Afghanistan holds funerals for almost 50 people killed in an Islamic State attack on a mosque. His 9th Symphony is considered by many to be his magnum opus, but today Beethoven's unfinished 10th Symphony has been completed using AI. When the composer died 194 years ago, he left only a few handwritten sketches of his last work. Experts fed those notes into a computer along with other music that influenced him to create 2 movements. During tests, audiences have been unable to pinpoint where Beethoven's work ends and the AI begins. Well, Australia's food scene is going nuts for a once unheard of products like almond and pistachio spreads. An Oakley business has quadrupled production thanks to lockdowns and a quiz show plug. Business reporter Chris Kohler.
Blend it up, mix it in, squirt it into a jar and send it out. For Nick Sheridan, the idea of turning almonds, pistachios and peanuts into spreads for his toast has become big business.
This year we're on track to go past $1.5 million and we're hoping to actually close closer to $2 million.
That's this year, but 2 years ago the business needed money, so Nick tried something unorthodox. Unfortunately, the questions weren't a great fit.
I've never read Harry Potter.
You've never read Harry Potter? We've found the person in the world, ladies and gentlemen.
And while he walked away without any cash, there was a big endorsement.
Nick, you wouldn't, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but some of our staff here and our crew are devotees of your peanut butter business known as 99th Monkey.
Eddie was very kind and gave me a lot of time to have a chat about the business. And I'll tell you what, the next day, we've never seen activity like that.
Nick quit his job and went nuts full time. Production quadrupled last year, and now the 200-gram jars sell for $7 each in every Coles supermarket. But it all sounds easy when you say it like that.
100%, yeah. I was effectively working 2 full-time jobs and had 2 kids in that time as well.
Part of the reason his hard work is paying off is the pandemic.
People had a lot more money to spend on basically the only thing that they could, and that was food retailing.
Analysts say supermarket sales for premium products have gone through the roof.
People were buying more items, but people were sort of upgrading their existing purchases to more premium items, I guess in part as a treat to get through the lockdown periods.
It's meant a 60% sales boost for 99th Monkey each year through COVID, unheard of a few years ago, but from an Oakley warehouse, peanut butter is being muscled out. Chris Kohler, 9 News.
And Madeline Slattery joins us now, and it was much cooler today, Maddie.
It sure was, Alicia, and temperature-wise, it's been a weekend of extremes. Our average maximum for the month is 19.7, and yesterday the city was more than 5 degrees higher than that, with a top of 24.8, and that made it our warmest day of the month so far. Today, we reached 14.9, almost 5 degrees lower than the average, making it our coldest day of the month. Yesterday we were under warm northerly winds, but a large band of rain has swept through the southeast of the country, so winds have shifted around to much cooler southerlies. Tomorrow isn't looking much better, but we do have some warmer days ahead, and I'll have those details later on, Alicia.
That is good news. We'll see you very soon, Maddie. Well, children as young as 5 could be jabbed by Christmas in Australia. The details next. Plus calls to support carers unable to access NDIS funding. And the Aussie preparing to blast into space beside Hollywood royalty. Australian children as young as 5 could be eligible for a COVID vaccine by the end of December. Pfizer has confirmed it will make a provisional determination application to the Therapeutics Goods Administration. It says approval is not yet guaranteed as the virus poses only a small level of danger to kids aged 5 to 11. Advocates for unpaid carers are calling for greater recognition of the selfless duties they perform. As Justine Conway reports, 11% are unable to access NDIS support, despite putting in more than 2 billion hours of voluntary work last year.
Like a lot of mums, Julie Fisher wears many hats. She runs a busy household, has a part-time job and is a carer to her 15-year-old son, Darcy.
Do you think I do a good job?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Darcy was born with Down syndrome.
Yeah, it means a developmental delay. So he's reached his milestones, but he reaches them a lot later than typical children. So now at 15, I still have to assist him with all of his self-care needs.
While she has help from her 2 older sons, Julie is Darcy's full-time carer. As he's grown, the challenges have changed.
Another one of the things we have to assist Darcy with is shaving.
But her love and dedication has never wavered.
I want to see him achieve and I want to see him do great things. So assisting him to do that that's the easy part, you know, because when he does achieve things and he does reach a milestone, it's just so wonderful.
There are 2.65 million Australians like Julie providing unpaid care and support to a family member or friend.
Carers are a very hidden population, and they would say that they have been very hidden during the COVID crisis.
And that's why National Carers Week is so important. It's estimated carers put in 2.2 billion hours of unpaid work last year, equating to almost $80 billion in unpaid wages. 11% aren't even eligible for NDIS funding, and they're 3 times more likely to be lonely than the average person.
We need to support these carers. We need to sustain them in their role so that they can remain caring for the people that they love and be well supported to do that.
It's important to look after yourself as well. You've got to remember that if you're not doing well, then they're not going to do well either.
Justine Conway, 9 News.
Such an important story, isn't it? Well, thousands have packed out squares in Rome to protest the Green Pass, which comes into effect this week. Italy is the first country in Europe to make the digital certificate, which shows proof of vaccination, mandatory for all workers. The rally turned violent when demonstrators tried to break into the Prime Minister's office. Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz has resigned over a corruption investigation that triggered moves to oust him. The 35-year-old has recommended the Foreign Minister replace him, but denies any wrongdoing and will stay on as head of his party. Kurz became the youngest head of government in the world when he took office 4 years ago, aged 31. An Australian engineer blasts off into space on Wednesday aboard a Blue Origin rocket owned by billionaire Jeff Bezos. Chris Bosshausen will become only the third Aussie to leave the Earth's atmosphere. Alison Petrowski met him.
In March they called and said, hey, our founder Jeff Bezos is going to fly in July. Would you like to go after him? And I said yes.
Blasting off from the Texan desert this week, Chris Bosshausen will go where only 2 Australians and a handful of billionaires have gone before.
I want to flip upside down and soak in the view. I'm actually really terrible about remembering to not get distracted when something cool is happening. So my promise this time is I'm going to look out of the window and do nothing but look at the view.
Shooting up just above the Kármán line, 100 kilometres above sea level, the round trip will last less than 15 minutes and mirror Jeff Bezos' journey in July.
How much are you paying to go up?
Well, it's a little expensive, I can say that, but what I think is cool is just like airplane travel these days is cheap. It used to be expensive. I think this will get cheaper too.
A suborbital joyride on a billionaire's spaceship and a hope for science fiction to become reality.
Prepare to beam me aboard on my signal.
Captain Kirk, aka William Shatner, set to become the oldest person ever in space.
What do the space guys do if they have to go to the bathroom?
You're about to find out.
Well,
it's only 11 minutes, so I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, but I mean,
you never know.
When you're 90, 11 minutes can be a long time.
You're about to go into space, which is cool in itself, but you're also about to go into space with William Shatner.
Then they had a call and they said, we're just letting you know that this person will be flying and we assume you won't have a problem with that. And I was amazing actually because, you know, my whole life has been about promoting like space travel and I can't think of a better ambassador than William Shatner.
A self-described space dork, Bosshausen attended school at Tumbarumba High in the New South Wales Snowy Mountains. A PhD in physics from Sydney University under his belt, the 44-year-old spent years working for NASA and now lives in America's tech capital, San Francisco, running his own satellite company, mapping our changing planet.
But a lot of space technology really has applications on Earth and is a really great way for us to make the planet a better and safer place.
Wednesday's flight will be the 18th for New Shepard. The reusable rocket controlled by artificial intelligence, it can decide to separate the upper capsule in a moment of disaster, like a pilot's ejector seat.
I'd rather die trying to go to space than bungee jumping. So, you know, I'm willing to sort of put my life on the line for something I really believe in, which is this. I think this is an important moment in history.
What message have you got for a young Chris at Tumbarumba High dreaming big?
I actually think you can get pretty far on a dream. Like, dreams are enough, and I think the secret is just not to give up. The one thing they don't tell you is it just takes a very long time. So it's taken me 20 years to get here, so just being patient and just sticking to your dream, it'll work out.
In San Francisco, Alison Petrowski, 9 News.
Fugitives flee a stolen car after it slammed into a fire hydrant in Melbourne's north. That's ahead. Behind the scenes with Melbourne's elite squad targeting youth gangs. And an Aussie teenage tycoon sells his business in a multi-million-dollar deal. Two men are on the run after crashing a stolen Subaru into a brick wall, causing considerable damage to a building at Strathmore. Water gushed metres into the air from a crushed fire hydrant on Pascoe Road. The dog squad searched for the driver and his passenger, but they're yet to be found. Police suspect they would have suffered some injuries in the smash. China has described Tony Abbott as a failed and pitiful politician after his provocative remarks in Taiwan last week. The former Prime Minister labelled Beijing a bully, warning it could lash out disastrously very soon. The Chinese embassy hit back today, calling his speech despicable and insane, adding it exposed his hideous anti-China features and will further discredit him. More than 1,200 young offenders have been arrested in the past 12 months in a blitz on youth crime. With fewer innocent victims targeted during our repeated lockdowns, police say gangs are instead warring with each other. Nira Tai has this exclusive report.
Notorious gang members taken off the streets as police thwart a potential home invasion.
There is no doubt that was going to be rival gang violence at that home.
6 young men were on their way to a rival gang gathering in Auburn Vale when police pounced. Behind the wheel of the stolen car was a 15-year-old boy, already on 4 counts of bail. A search of the vehicle uncovered 11 knives.
There's all sorts of reasons they become rival gang members. Often it's escalating violence. There's been violence between a couple of people and then it's this sort of payback violence that occurs. Commonly, they'll agree to meet somewhere and then be involved in violence on each other.
Knives are the weapons of choice. They're easy to access and hide, but gang members are arming themselves in other ways too.
Machetes, swords, gel blasters, imitation firearms and firearms for that matter. So we've seized a lot of weapons.
A 19-year-old disqualified driver who was allegedly high on drugs took police on a wild chase through Melbourne's north. Not only did her 4 other friends in the stolen Toyota break curfew, they had a gun. The dog squad helping to track them down in Mickleham.
Cars are stolen for joyrides, to get to various locations that they want to meet up. So they're still committing other crimes. It's just not as prevalent during a pandemic.
Police have seen a drop in the number of innocent victims being targeted on the street, in part thanks to stay-at-home orders.
A lot less people out in the community, and as a result of that, there are less people able to be victims of crime.
Wannabe gangsters instead warring with one another. In the past 12 months, there's been plenty of bloodshed, lives lost and families shattered. But since Operation Alliance was launched, 1,205 youths have been arrested, 2,823 have been charged and 498 were remanded.
Serious and violent offending often requires prison sentences, but there are other levels and lower levels of new and emerging gang members that need to be diverted away from the justice system.
In 2020, police intelligence revealed there were 618 youth gang members in Victoria. That number has now dropped to 534, a decrease of 13.6%.
Historically, we used to have very specific groups. You know, certain cultural groups would only identify themselves in one area and others in another, whereas now we see a lot more crossover.
And it's not just all about law and order. While local police are constantly doing bail checks, they're also teaming up with youth workers in the Embedded Youth Outreach program in a bid to steer kids onto the right track and support their parents.
These are parents, these are families who have got a son or daughter involved perhaps in crime or in an area they never wanted them to be a part of.
Working closely with families to try to understand why particular teenagers offend.
We were offering that support to the mum who basically was at her wit's end. She also provided us with some information that helped then manage this youth because we could work out what his triggers were.
Police admit there is no quick fix when it comes to tackling youth crime, but what they won't do is publicly name the different gangs, as it can give them more notoriety. Other groups can also take them on, but what's most concerning is when rival gangs commit more serious offences so they can become the gang of choice.
It's a long-term piece of work, trying to stop the youth of today becoming adult offenders for tomorrow.
Nira Tai, 9 News.
He may be just a teenager and still at school, but this young Gold Coast prodigy is already worth a staggering 7 figures. 15-year-old Sam Richards began a plastic glassware business named Belafort 2 years ago. The budding entrepreneur raised equity, selling his idea to a room full of 2,000 potential investors. As for what's next for Sam, his main focus right now is simply finishing high school. All right, now returning with tonight's sport, here is Alicia Milling.
Thank you so much, Alicia. After the break, there's still a lot more to play out as we near the home stretch to this year's AFL trade period. Here is Braden Ingram.
Alicia, the Dogs, Cats and Bombers have a busy few days ahead to get deals done. I'll tell you all about it after the break.
Thanks so much, Braden. Also, the draft hopeful with a Collingwood connection. And Tyson Fury on target and on song. It It is crunch time in the AFL trade period with a number of key deals still hanging in the balance. Braden Ingram is live in the trade room. Braden, just 3 days left.
Yeah, and Alicia, it's likely many of those will go down to the final hour on Wednesday evening. Now, as we reported last night, young giant Bobby Hill requested a trade to Victoria, and today he zeroed in on the Bombers as his preferred destination. But with a year to run on his contract, it will require the two clubs to come to a mutual agreement if that move is to happen. Geelong's Jordan Clark, meanwhile, has set his sights on a return to Western Australia, with Fremantle likely to hand over either pick 19 or 22 as a part of a deal to secure him. Young midfielder Patrick Lipinski looks destined to land at Collingwood, but an offer believed to involve picks in the 50s is yet to prove satisfactory for the Bulldogs at this stage, while the Swans and Crows still appear a fair way apart on a suitable deal for Jordan Dawson. Sydney believe he's worth a top 10 pick, but they'll need to craft some trade magic if they're to somehow get their hands on Adelaide's pick 4. And then, of course, there's Hawthorn, who got themselves into a fine mess with suggestions they could move on one of their experienced stars, such as Jaeger O'Meara or Tom Mitchell, in exchange for high draft picks. Waverley Park, an interesting place to be in the final few days, which, Alicia, will no doubt be frantic.
Absolutely, Braden Ingram, thank you. And this week, clubs will turn their attention from the trade period to the upcoming draft in what has been another challenging year for Victoria's top prospects. One teenager who looms as a potential top 20 pick is Campbell Chesser, and he's got a powerful ally on his side. Like most draft prospects, Campbell Chesser is juggling a fair bit at the moment. Interviews with clubs, studying for Year 12 exams and maintaining his mullet.
It's a fair assumption. There's a few boys around, especially in this draft pool, that have got one. So, yeah, kind of growing mine out at the moment.
While Victorian youngsters have endured 2 COVID-interrupted seasons, Chesser is feeling it more than most, following a knee injury earlier this year.
I've played 5 games over, 24 months and it's been a little bit frustrating, but everyone's in the same boat, especially here in Metro Melbourne.
Still, the talented 185-centimetre jack of all trades is being touted as a top 20 pick. He's met with all 18 clubs, but has no idea where he'll land come draft night, unlike good mate Nick Dacos, whose destiny lies at the Pies.
Lives up to all the talk and hype around him, I think. He's played some pretty crazy games this year.
Still, there is a Collingwood connection. Family friend and former club president Eddie Maguire among Chesser's mentors.
It's kind of been a support for me and mentor when I've kind of moved into Melbourne and transitioning into this life, more so around school, the importance of that and studying. So, it's been really good and really good support for me.
A disjointed preparation leading into the T20 World Cup won't daunt Australia as the team settles into 6 days of hotel quarantine in Dubai. The Aussies will play warm-up matches against India and New Zealand before the tournament opener against South Africa on October 23.
Once we get into these conditions and start our preparation, that's when it really hits home that we've got a tournament coming up and that we've got ample time to get ourselves prepared there.
Meanwhile, Australia's women's clinched victory over India in the second T20 to take out the multi-format series, but it wasn't the night's standout moment.
Oh, what a ball! That has come back from miles outside off stump, and Healy's on her way.
The final T20 clash gets underway tonight on the Gold Coast. Despite an underwhelming performance at Caulfield, Zaki remains deserving of Cox Plate favouritism, according to his trainers. The boom galloper kick-starting his recovery this morning with a dip in the bay. Braden Ingram again.
In the shadows of the city, a glorious Melbourne sunrise proves the ideal cure for an unexpected defeat.
It's nice to bring him down to the beach. He's enjoyed walking through the water this morning. It's great for the recovery.
Zaki lapping it up at Altona Beach, oblivious to the weight of expectation. Yesterday's faltering performance, where victory seemed all but assured, instead left more questions than answers.
It's good to get through that run. Can't be too disappointed that the horse has been beaten. He's still ran pretty well and they just went a bit too slow for him and he might have been a victim of circumstances.
While Zaki eased in betting markets after that third place finish, he's still the outright Cox Plate favourite. And for those who now have their doubts...
I think just stick with the ship. He's a pretty honest horse. He's come through it well. Just put a line through yesterday and if you forget about yesterday's run, he still deserves to be the short price favourite.
For a time this morning, the beach resembled rush hour. Leading trainer Kieran Maher guiding his team onto the sands and in for a dip. His star import Gold Trip stretching the legs ahead of next month's Melbourne Cup tilt. While at Werribee, the defending champion, Twilight Payment, settled in after touching down from Europe. And it's set to be a rough week for champion jockey Damien Oliver, who'll need to shed around 4 kilograms in order to climb aboard second favourite Delphi in Saturday's Caulfield Cup. At 52.5 kilos, it will be the lightest Oliver has ridden at in more than a decade. Braden Ingram, 9 News.
An early exit from qualifying has left Daniel Ricciardo with plenty of work to do in tonight's Turkish Grand Prix. The Aussie never got going in slippery conditions, settling for 15th on the grid.
I don't really know if it's going to be easy to overtake or not. I mean, no track's easy, but I think it's still possible, so try to put on an attack tomorrow, put on a charge.
Red Bull's Max Verstappen recovered from an early spin to qualify second behind pole sitter Valtteri Bottas. Isla Tomljanovic has secured her best win of the year, upsetting 5th seed Garbiñe Muguruza to reach the 3rd round at Indian Wells. It's the 4th time the Aussie has beaten a top 10 player in her career.
What a victory for the Australian. Isla Tomljanovic knocks out Garbiñe Muguruza.
Fellow Aussie John Millman faces Italian Yannick Sinner tomorrow. And one of the best boxing matches in recent memory has gone down in Las Vegas, with Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder going toe-to-toe for the heavyweight title. Both men were knocked down throughout the fight before Fury landed the decisive blow in the 11th round.
Taking supernatural strength. Fury throwing it up again. And that's it. It's over.
Upon retaining his title, the Brit celebrated in trademark fashion.
I was walking with my feet on the field. I was walking in Vegas. And do I really feel the way I feel?
And he'll be singing all the way to the bank, set to pocket around $13 million for his efforts. The voice of an angel.
I was going to say another career might be calling, but perhaps not. Thank you very much for that, Leish. All right, Madeline Slattery returns now. And how's the week ahead looking, Maddie?
Well, Alicia, there'll be some pros and cons in the forecast. We've got some warmer days ahead, but some very wet ones as well. I'll have the full 7-day outlook next. Hello again, and it was significantly cooler around Melbourne today. After a low of 10 degrees, it only climbed to 14.9. Showers moved through overnight, but falls were generally light, most suburbs collecting a millimetre or 2. They cleared by dawn, leaving the day fairly dry, and most spots reached maximums of 15 or 16 degrees. Then a few light showers reappeared in the afternoon through western suburbs. Further out, showers hovered over Gippsland and the northeast for most of the day and through the southwest in the afternoon. And it was a particularly cold night through the state's west. Hamilton dipped to 2 degrees overnight. Then most areas reached maximums in the low to mid-teens. Looking at the satellite picture, we can see the band of rain that extends from the southeast coast of the country all the way through to the Northern Territory. Tomorrow, that system will continue to sweep up over Queensland, delivering widespread rain and potential storms, while the southeast will remain mostly dry, dominated by a high pressure system strengthening to the south. Tonight it'll be very cold again around the state, and there could be areas of inland frost, particularly through the Wimmera, and the Bureau has issued a frost warning for that district. Light showers are expected on and south of the ranges, contracting to the central and Gippsland coasts by the afternoon, and maximums will be similar to today, low to mid-teens in the state's south, high teens through the north. Melbourne can expect showers to move over the city and eastern suburbs overnight and into the morning, clearing by the middle of the day. Melton and Epping will be the coldest spots tonight, dipping to 4 degrees, and then southerly winds will keep it cool tomorrow with maximums of 14 or 15 under partly cloudy skies. Then Melbourne is in for a cold night, down to 6 degrees, but a very pleasant day will follow, partly cloudy and a top of 21 on Tuesday, up to 22 on Wednesday, but showers will appear in the afternoon and evening, along with a chance of a thunderstorm, and the city could collect up to 15 millimetres. Showers again on Thursday, the chance of another storm in the afternoon and evening, and the temperature will drop right down to 16 degrees. Friday is looking even colder, down to 15, and more showers, up to 10 millimetres forecast. They'll continue into Saturday before easing by the afternoon, a top of 15 again, and then a partly cloudy day on Sunday with a shower or 2 in the morning and 15 degrees. And that is what the city can expect tomorrow. A possible early shower before a partly cloudy day, heading for 15. A couple of dry days ahead of a very wet week, Alicia.
All right, Maddie, thanks so much for that. And before we go, here's Carl Stefanovic with a preview of tonight's 60 Minutes.
Thanks, Alicia. Tonight, a major investigation by Nick McKenzie, exposing an Australian corporate disgrace.
Alleged organised crime figures, drug traffickers, human traffickers.
And the frightening final days of Trump.
Really is a blueprint for a coup d'etat.
That had his generals sweating bullets.
China had gone on alert.
That's tonight after the block. Back to you, Alicia.
And that is 9 News this Sunday. I hope you have a great evening. For now, good night. He doesn't.